Our episode today is from close to the end of Season 3, after the death of Sha're, but right now the big concern is the Jaffa. Braytek shows up with a wounded comrade, saying their world of Chulak was attacked by Apophis. Remember that also in Season 3 is when Apophis took over for Sokar, and so has a new and more powerful army at his disposal, so he did a little disposing. After the titles, Braytek explains that development and tells Teal'c not to bother trying to help, it's already over. Apophis would rather wipe out all the Jaffa on Chulak than try to weed out the disloyal from the loyal. He's that kind of a guy. An asshole. As for the new apprentice, he's not going to make it.
You are the bravest Jaffa I have ever trained.
Then he looks over at Teal'c and shakes his head, draws a finger across his throat with his tongue hanging out before giving half a shrug. Braytek doesn't take this guy's death well. One day he wants to spread this guy's ashes over the grave of Apophis, he says, and I don't think anyone in this room would argue. Apophis is the kind of guy Texans say needs killing. But what is curious is that Apophis chose to massacre them in the way he did. I mean, it's a reason for us to wonder at his motives, not, oh, genocide, curiouser and curiouser. He could have bombed them from orbit is what I'm saying, but instead he sent in ground forces. So he must have been trying to find something to make sure that he didn't accidentally blow it up. They realized the best option would be the child of Apophis and Amunet, that she hid the child away and Apophis wants him for all the obvious reasons. Be my new host, and don't give away any secrets to my enemies, and don't let the system lords find out I was naughty. Daniel shares the only thing that he's learned, Keb, but Braytek has actually heard of it. It's a legendary place, kept secret from the Gould for a while, except the Gould have a habit of getting information out of people. So they eventually found out about it and went themselves, but they never returned. Well, Daniel says all he's got to go on is this time in legend that Osiris hid from Seth there.
That story is told among Jaffa, is that Osiris hid on one of the planets of the Lochna Koan.
The what now?
Those are the planets of the Lochna Koan.
Okay. So we're going to the planet of the knock-knock joke. SG-1 and SG-2 plus Braytek will be there, just in case Apophis shows up. Considering that there's some Jaffa tracks here, yeah, things look bad. So they follow them and find a spot where clearly a Jaffa woman was discovered. Probably the priestess entrusted with the child. If you're getting a little confused, what happened is in Forever and a Day, we find out that Amunet had found Pops and taken the child back. We don't know where she is, but one of the last things Sha're wanted him to know is that happened and do something about it, please. Anyway, they follow the tracks into the woods where she ran to try and escape. And considering there are very, very dead Jaffa there, things didn't go all that well for them. All of the Jaffa are dead. They've all accounted for all of the footprints, see. There's some kind of energy that burnt them to a crisp, but not the ground around them. The priestess, though, she is dead, shot in the gut by a staff weapon. But there's no sign of the baby. But there is, however, the sight of a very impressive-looking temple. That's got to be where we go. I'm only saying, if I was RPGing this, that's where I would go to turn in my quest and get the next one. I'm sure of it. The place isn't overgrown either. Someone has been maintaining these grounds. So Daniel and Braytek both disarm themselves, and reluctantly O'Neill does too. And the trio head inside to see what they find.
Hey, whoa! Where'd you come from?
I've been here for some time.
No, you weren't here when we just came in.
Here is everywhere you are.
Visa's less successful slogan. Daniel takes over. This is obviously social science stuff, but even he is confused by leave no barrier between who you are and where you are.
I believe he wishes us to take off our boots.
Man, I hate that. I don't want anything to do with a religion that requires my feet get cold. What's the point of that anyway? It's not like the weatherproofing in my shoes is going to stop the drip of Mother Nature into me or something. Anyway, the guy keeps answering everything with expressions. I mean, like sayings, not like he's making goofy faces at them.
I only know a snowflake cannot exist in a storm of fire.
You're telling me you should see some of the emails I've gotten. Trying to get him to give a straightforward answer about the kid is impossible. It's like talking to the Riddler if he had aphasia. Outside, Teal'c briefly sees something in the water, but brushes it off to Carter. They have more important things to worry about, like trying to prepare for Apophis's inevitable arrival while Daniel's holding a conversation with a fortune cookie factory. Braytek is very interested in all of this himself, but the monk says, in his monk speak, that the only way Braytek could pursue this path is if he gave up the Goa'uld within him, which he can't do without dying, and Braytek says he is not ready to die yet. For one thing, he wouldn't get the deposit back for that vacation reservation. So it's just Daniel who learns.
She goes into the lake without making a ripple. She goes into the forest without disturbing a blade of grass.
What does it have in its pockets? The subject finally turns to the kid, and Daniel said he promised Sha're that he would look after them. So for a moment, things are coherent, but then it's back to stuff about candles and food being cooked and no shoes sitting uncomfortably in front of an unlit candle. Daniel is forced to admit that part of the reason he wants the child is the knowledge that can be used to resist the Goa'uld. He admits, he hates them. They killed his wife, plus the enslaving and the genocide and the hey, it hurts me. But the monk says hatred will lead to the child's death. I can understand that, but what's the good of all of this compared to using all their technology against them?
Or a match, it's much more practical.
Okay, not saying it's not neat, but the Goa'uld will probably not be impressed when they show up with death rays. But then again, I've rolled enough 20-sided dice to know you start with the little spells, and the next thing you know, you're summoning spider demons and making it rain lava in just the right spots, so that stuff would surprise the Goa'uld. At the monk's prompting, Daniel puts his hand in the candle flame and, shocker, burns himself. The lesson is to teach himself that he has the capacity in him for trust, a capacity that can be used to make him hurt himself. But I guess it's the first step in realizing that this needs to be sort of a use the force Luke kind of thing, that he's not doing it, but rather allowing the world of nature through him to do it. Remember that Empire Strikes Back's Jedi philosophy drew from Buddhism, and Daniel believes what the monk is doing is the origin of Buddhism on Earth, so this similarity isn't surprising. When Jack has had enough of waiting, he comes in, where Daniel excitedly explains that the walls contain what is essentially an instruction manual for how to ascend to a higher plane of existence. O'Neill is naturally a bit skeptical until Daniel does the lighting the candle trick, and remains skeptical. Yeah, that's great, but if they don't have answers soon, Jack is going to force the issue by ordering his people to thoroughly search the temple for the kid, with or without permission, because otherwise they're sitting around waiting for Apophis to kill them. So Daniel makes the point by causing Jack's rifle to hop into the air, turn around, and point at him. Which is impressive, although it violates at least 2 rules of gun safety, and that doesn't even count the ones that apply solely to psychokinesis. The conversation with the monk that follows doesn't impress O'Neill the way it did Daniel, especially when they can hear the sound of approaching gliders. Well, I guess that means it's time to dig in. Carter even needs to break out the old claymores, and O'Neill tells Daniel, look, alright, I get it. Slipping your hand into the bra of the ethereal plane is fun and all, but those gliders, those are the 2-minute warning. Kid, now. Because if you think being a temple will protect this place, look up Parthenon gunpowder explosion and see how well that worked out for Athena and the gang. Yep, an army has arrived, but Daniel shows off his new powers to Carter, who is amazed by this, but not yet convinced that he has superpowers that he gained by reading an instruction manual that has been used as wallpaper.
Under different circumstances, I would bring in the right equipment and check for some kind of concealed technology before I assume that...
Isn't there the smallest part of you that wants to believe a person can reach a higher level?
Yes, of course, but...
Don't you see what's happening here? I have that power.
And look, I've got this rock that keeps tigers away. The big red flag that says that Daniel isn't right is that the monk might teach Daniel one thing, to let him see what the journey can unlock, but would almost certainly train him in wisdom first before making big pillars of fire and pointing loaded guns at people. Thus, the conclusion that he seems to be missing is that, very likely, the fact that he thinks he can do these things, and what he chooses to do now with them, is the lesson. After they leave to deal with the 2,000 Jaffa coming their way, a creature of light appears and manifests as a woman, Oma, and then passes through a wall. Daniel follows and sees where the child is hidden, while outside the small party is preparing for a very one-sided war.
You'll be safe with me.
Not unless you've learned how to do Neo's bullet-stopping trick. He realizes, though, that it has been Oma the whole time, showing Daniel that she can protect the boy better than anyone. So he does the smart thing and leaves the kid with her, where she can guard and teach him. An emphasis on guard, please, because the Jaffa are already here for the kid, and if you need to defend a building from a small army, it's best if we have enough people to at least qualify as a basketball team. The monk heads out to politely tell them to leave. They don't seem to realize that the gathering storm is not a coincidence. Yeah, instead the lead Jaffa guns down the monk. But when O'Neill has them all draw on the Jaffa, Daniel tells him it's real important that they disarm. Daniel delivers this hilarious combo by first saying, "I was wrong, I was very wrong," regarding the builders of this temple being gone. And then he follows it up within like 10 seconds of, "If you're ever going to trust me now." Now yes, technically we are all very wrong at times. Usually though we kind of space out so that we don't come across as, "Oh boy, I was dead wrong here. Don't know where my head was, but don't worry. I am absolutely certain that I am right this time. Trust me with your lives." But no, none of the staff blasts reach them, fortunately. And then afterwards, the bad guys all get hit by lightning, and it is not pretty. And don't worry about the monk. He ascends into a being of pure energy.
I'll see both of you again someday, right?
Oh my, yes. This episode is a must-see as it introduces a central tenet of the Stargate universe, the idea of ascension. It will have far-reaching influence over the show. Maternal Instinct is better than Secrets, with a great guest appearance by Terry Chen, who was at the start of his career here as the monk. The character, despite being an archetype, was convincing and enjoyable. If he seems familiar to you, you might be remembering him as Prax from seasons 2 and 3 of The Expanse. O'Neill and Daniel have some nice moments too, and we see a side of Braid Tech that we don't often see. So I'm rounding this up to recommended. It's like a better quality episode as far as fine goes, but so close that because it's a must-see, I'm going to push that up over the top to recommended. It's more of an episode to be appreciated than savored like a lot of others are, but I stand by that rating.